come back to the candidates. President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, candidates of the ruling APC in the forthcoming presidential elections, are here answering questions on what they have to offer Nigeria and her citizens if they are elected into office again. Before the break, I got handed a few questions from people, at home. So I'm just going to ask one of those questions, and then maybe Mr. President can answer that alongside a question that was asked previously on corruption. So Ms. Abisoye Balogun says, what does the president want to do with the funds recovered by the EFCC? So we've had situations where the EFCC has recovered funds which are thought to be from corrupt activities. And so the question from someone at home is that, what are you planning to do with those funds?
Well, I think the government made a statement on that. Firstly, by asking that there should be TSA, Treasury Single Account, so that all monies, either as revenue or from recovered from corrupt people, will go through one single account, so that it can be accounted for and how it is taken away. I think I have already made a statement on that issue, and what we are doing is that the extreme deficit in infrastructure, that money will be put, for the infrastructure, the roads, the rail, power, but it will go along with budgeting, which means initially the National Assembly, when they approve the budget, whatever deficit is likely to happen will be funded from that money.
Mr. Vice President, as a lawyer, I'd like to actually ask you, because some people have actually suggested that where a forfeiture has happened without a conviction, it might be problematic spending that money. What is the legal position?
Well, the legal position is that once there's a final forfeiture, the asset already belongs to the state. So frankly, I can't understand what sort of problem would arise so long as there has been a final forfeiture.
Because we are having cases where people are not fully charged and no conviction has taken place, but they're being made to return money.
Yes.
So it's in those cases I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah. When a person returns, for example, we found cases where assets were returned, where houses were returned, or in some cases where there are houses and all of that. And what we do is that we advertise. We say, if this belongs to you and you have a legal claim to it, even if it was seized from you, if you have a legal claim, show the legal claim. Show that it was purchased by legal means and all that. If not, it will be forfeited to the state. There's a complete procedure of forfeiture, which is under the existing laws, the ICPC laws, the EFCC laws. There's a complete process. And those processes are what we follow very strictly. And once there's a final forfeiture order by a court, that's the end of it. There are situations where people return assets, where they return funds, Those funds that are returned are voluntarily returned. Because if for example, $1 billion is found in your account and you earn only 500,000 naira a month, then clearly there's some explanation you need to make. Most people would rather voluntarily return the fund rather than go into any arguments with the EFCC. And in such cases, we simply forfeit.
So what is the basis for deciding who you're going to prosecute and who you're going to just allow to just return funds? Because we've had a mixed bag. We've had people who've had assets taken away from them and they're walking the streets. Nothing has happened to them. We have people whose assets have been seized and they're being tried. What is the rationale that determines who gets persecuted and who walks away?
Let me say straight away that there is no distinction. The mere fact that someone has returned assets doesn't mean that they are free and can walk away. And there are so many people walking the streets who are on trial, by the way, because you are on bail almost within days of your being brought before the court. So that's not the problem. What happens, though, is this. What a prosecutor does is to say, for example, that if you return money, I might decide as a prosecutor to make you a prosecution witness rather than be an accused person. If, for example, there's a fraud involving 5, 6 people, if you charge all of them, you're not going to find evidence, because unless you get each of them to make a confessional statement, and the confessional statement only inculpates the person who has made that statement. So you must find 1 or 2 of them who will be able to give evidence. So you might say, okay, of these 6, I'm going to decide to make 2 of them who are probably, more or less guilty of the same offense or responsible for the same misconduct. But 1 or 2 of them will be prosecution witnesses. So that's really the way it goes.
Okay. Let me bring Mr. President in, because I want to switch gear a little bit and start talking about security, right? Mr. President, we've had people say that Boko Haram has been technically defeated. And yet a technically defeated Boko Haram is killing soldiers in the northeast. What is going wrong with your fight against Boko Haram?
Well, I think the best people that really answer that question are people from the northeast. That means Yobe, Borno, Bauchi, Adamawa. You see, when this administration came in, Boko Haram was holding 17 local governments in the northeast. They are not holding any local government now. So they have resorted, to indoctrinating young people, especially girls, wrap them up with explosives and dispatch them to soft targets, churches, mosques, marketplaces, motor parks. But the best you can get about the performance of this administration vis-a-vis stopping that Boko Haram occupation of Nigeria is when you visit Maiduguri or beyond. People go back to the land they are farming. They go back to the office. They can drive from Maiduguri to Kano virtually any time of the day, which wasn't happening when we came in. And as I said, I still feel that you, the press, should do more research and not just going and staying in a hotel in Maiduguri. Try to go to Munguno and talk to the people.
But there's no doubt, though, that we've seen an increase in attacks against the military in particular by Boko Haram. In the last 6 months, we've had 2 major military installations attacked and soldiers killed. Are you at all concerned with this focus or new focus that Boko Haram seems to have, which is basically targeting military targets, and the success they've actually had in killing hundreds of soldiers in the last few months?
You see, thank goodness, if you have a background of military training, that when you don't fight any conventional war, now that they are putting tactics of terrorists, they choose their targets. They choose the time, they choose where to attack, at which time. With that, you have to be highly mobile, you have to have very good communication, and we have resources limitations, because a lot of Nigerians don't feel that we are in an emergency, that the military needs a lot more money for equipment, a lot more money, for spare parts, for communications, and so on. But Boko Haram, certainly, they are being supported by forces outside Nigeria.
Now, you talked about resources. I think since coming into government, my total calculation is that you've spent something like, or you've budgeted, let me not use the word spend, you've budgeted something like 1.8 trillion for defense. And yet, that's the number I have. I might be wrong.
That's wrong. That's very wrong.
Okay, we'll cross-check and make sure. But I was told my research showed over the last 3 years, I'm talking about. 3 years, 1.8 trillion. So not one budgetary cycle from 2015 to date. Yeah, 1.8 trillion. And yet we have soldiers complaining about a lack of equipment. We have soldiers, last year we saw Maiduguri Airport demonstration by soldiers who felt they were not being looked after. And so the question is really, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, how much are you holding the leadership of the Army accountable, given the complaints we're getting from the rank and file about welfare?
I received weekly situation report from the military in the front. It's extremely difficult, to accuse, the soldiers of going to the extent of demonstrating. But the consequences of that now was that the Army Command has to put investigation, court-martial officers and men for demonstrating, because soldiers are not supposed to demonstrate. And then the action the military is taking against in the front line, let me call it Maiduguri the front line or the northeast, is not normally given to the press. Because on the trial, those who have been tried, if they are not found guilty, they are supposed to be reabsorbed and posted out. But those found guilty are sentenced by the court-martial. And this is being done.
Okay, so the concern, though, for ordinary Nigerians is that soldiers appear to be getting punished for being whistleblowers, for indicating that all is not well with the military hierarchy, and that the military hierarchy is not spending the money that it is allocated on soldiers and their welfare. Are you not concerned at all about that?
Certainly I'm concerned, where we get officers who shortchanging troops, either misappropriating their ration accounts or they are not paying them in time. But one of the things I did when I came back clearly, and I got the governor of the central bank involved, was that as far north in the country, there are banks. And soldiers are allowed to open 2 accounts. One, where their families are, and make a written allocation. And then they take the balance wherever they are. And that was being done. So we foresaw that because of the experience I had in my military service, to make sure that there is no longer pay on the table. So that paymasters cannot shortchange them.
So you're not convinced that there's anything untoward going on with the military budget? That's what it sounds like, that you're not convinced that there's a case to be answered by the hierarchy of the military. That's what it sounds like.
Well, the system, I believe the system is still working. Otherwise, there would have been a complete breakdown. The system is working, but it's much more difficult. And don't forget, there are soldiers that think they should only wear a uniform to get the security. Mainly the material security. Salary, allowances, and accommodation for the family. If you ask them to go to the front, they will put the gun down and disappear.
Yeah, but isn't part of the problem is that not many people feel that Nigeria is a country they can now sacrifice for. People do not feel like Nigeria is looking after them, and therefore they can look after Nigeria.
No, that's not even fair.
Why do you say that's not fair?
No, that's not true. If you look at the sheer number of Nigerian troops that have died, have laid their lives on the line, and we just recently celebrated the Remembrance Day, the commitment of Nigerian troops to this country is unparalleled. There's nowhere else in the world. To say any suggestion at all that the Nigerian troops are not prepared to lay down their lives for the country is certainly not the case at all.
And I think that's certainly the case for the majority, but we are also saying there are soldiers. If you go on social media, there are videos of soldiers complaining about the fact that they're not being looked after, that they don't have boots. And, and that the demonstration, certainly in Maiduguri, was not something that journalists manufactured. This was soldiers protesting their terms of engagement. And so the question is, are there things that are going wrong within the military and which this government, for whatever reason, seems really reluctant to investigate? Because we've not heard of anybody saying, this is enough concern for us to do something about it.
No, but frankly, my take on that is that if there are issues, if, for example, they are assuming that there is any misappropriation of government funds, there's a process, there's a clear process for ensuring that that is not the case. And if people are found responsible, we've had investigations on military spending, and if people are found to be guilty of those things, they will be prosecuted properly. I think that's it.
Okay. There's Mata Suleiman. She had a question to ask Mr. President. Is she in the crowd? No? Okay, we'll take a few more questions. On security, please. If you have questions on other things, can you wait until a little bit later? Let's finish with the issue of security now. Questions on security? Yes, sir. The gentleman over there. The gentleman right at the back, and then maybe the one right at the back there in blue. Yes. If you just come and line up, please. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. President. It's an honor for me to be here this evening. I think we've done very well. My name is Andrew Ogboro. I think we've done very well in the last 4 years by the numbers. We are the world poorest. We have 13 million out of school. There is poverty. There is hunger. Our universities are on strike. Now, I am tailoring it along the 3 items in which the campaigns were held: corruption, security, and the economy. We've taken corruption, and I understand how we are fighting that corruption, because we've just been told the former Babachi Lawal has been fired, but still he's part of the campaign, so I understand corruption. On security, I've also heard now that until we get more money, we will be where we are. So now I also understand security. So please, I also want to understand the economy, so I can go home and tell myself whether to come out and vote or not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is David Obinna Anyele. I work with Center for Citizens with Disabilities. I'm also the president of Nigerian Sitting Volleyball Federation. Sir, I'm talking about security. Our soldiers went to the war front, in particular in Northeast, and many of them are injured. Specifically, many of them suffered disability. In March 21st, 2015, Mr. President, you promised in Lafia, Nasarawa State, that you are going to support and work with the National Assembly to sign the disability bill if they send it to you. On the 18th of December 2018, the National Assembly transmitted the disability bill to your office. Sir, my question, how do you protect these Nigerian soldiers that have suffered disability by signing a law that will protect them from discrimination and harmful practices? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President. My name is Ayo Oyalo. Firstly, before I ask my question, I need to correct one impression now. The video you're talking about is a fake news. That's an old video of 2015 that has been, 2014, that has been disproved. So that needs to be corrected. Now, to talk about security, first and foremost, the president has said clearly about people spending 16 billion on power, and we don't have the power yet. So my question is, Mr. President, if you are re-elected, do you have any plan to deal with such people? Because the truth is, if people continue to steal and they get away with it and nothing is done, then people will continue to steal. So what is your plan to deal with people who have stolen Nigeria patrimony and are still walking free if you come back?
Thank you.
I'd like to intervene.
Yes.
I'd like to intervene on the question that Mr. Ogboru asked.
Okay.
Because it really has to do with the economy, the question of poverty and all of that, and where we are today, just so that Mr. Ogboru can vote. Mr. Ogboru, let me take the question on Nigeria being the poorest. Now, if you look at the MBS figures, that's the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics figures, as of 2012, Nigeria had 112 million people in extreme poverty. 2012. If you look at the figures today, going by those same figures, they say about 86 million, but higher than India. Now let me explain, and let me put this in perspective. From 2010 to 2014, Nigeria earned the highest ever from oil revenues. In 4 years, Nigeria earned 383 billion. Yet, poverty figures went from about 82 million to 112 million in 2012, and the numbers continued. That's the reason why we had a poverty problem. Unfortunately, with the resources we had, poverty was not addressed. Poverty doesn't disappear overnight. When people are poor, they remain poor unless the government does something about it. Nothing was done, despite the highest revenues in our history. In 3 years of our own government, 3 years, 94 billion is what we made from oil revenues. Compare that to 383 billion. Oil at some point was 110 to 114, and we had poverty figures of 112. Now, what did we do from the point of view of the economy to alleviate poverty? We started the largest program for social investment in the history of this country. That's why we have the conditional cash transfers. We're giving the poorest people in our country today 5,000 naira every month. We are only able to give we're hoping we'll be able to give about 1 million to start with. But in order to prevent stark poverty and malnutrition, we're doing our homegrown school feeding. We're feeding 9.2 million children every single day in public primary schools. Aside from that, the trader money and market money that we're doing, the trader money and market money, these are loans to the poorest. And let me give you an example of the trader money. Trader money, we're doing... Yes.
About the fact, can you hear me now? Yes. You talked about the 2012 figures of poverty, how it's 100. So what has happened in the world is that it used to be that extreme poverty was measured at people who live on less than $1 a day. It's now less than $2 a day. And maybe that might explain the differences in the numbers that you've quoted.
No. I'm not even quoting those numbers to show that what I'm merely saying is not that poverty has reduced considerably. No. I'm saying that what has happened now is that we're dealing with the issue of poverty. We're now dealing with it. When we earned money, when we earned a lot of money, there was no program. The program that was in place, the Sure P program, who can point to a sensible beneficiary? Who can point to a credible Sure P program that alleviated poverty? Who can? Let me finish the point that I'm making. Now, with the trader money, for example, I'll give you just one example. We're giving 2 million market women. We're giving 2 million of them loans starting with 10,000 naira. These are petty traders. Some of them, their inventory is not more than 2,000 naira. We give them 10,000 naira. When they pay back, automatically, electronically, they get 15,000. When they pay back, they get 20,000. And it goes all the way up to 100. And we're going to give 2 million people. All of that is 20 billion naira. Just 20 billion naira. Now, let me tell you what. There was a government in this country where $292 million was withdrawn weeks to the elections. Weeks to the elections. Another 40 billion was withdrawn weeks to the election. We have all the evidence. We've shown the evidence. Poverty at that time was still at 112. Today we're spending a mere 20 billion for 2 million people. If you calculate just $100 million, that today's money is 36 billion naira. If they had spent that 36 billion naira, more people would have moved out of poverty before we took office in 2015.
Okay, let me
So when we talk about poverty today, you can't, India had a plan to get its people out of poverty. That's how come India has even overtaken us. The first plan to get people out of poverty, a credible plan, is what we have in place. We're spending 500 billion. We're spending 500 billion in our budget. Poverty doesn't disappear. You've got to deal with it. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are dealing with it on a daily basis. We have a credible program. We're ensuring that that program works. And that's how it's done. Okay. Today, isn't it incredible? And Mr. Oboru, you too should find it completely incredible that people who squandered the kind of money, when oil was $100 a barrel, poverty was at 112 million extremely poor. Those same people today come and ask the sorts of questions and say, oh, but we're still poor. We're poor because nobody took the trouble to get people out of poverty. Okay. And that's what we're doing today.
We have to take a quick break, but before we do, a quick question. Again and again, when we talk to people in government, you keep talking about 16 years of PDP. For many Nigerians, the PDP and APC are two sides of the same coin, simply because you got so many PDP people in APC, and now some APC people have gone to PDP, and PDP people have come to APC. What is the difference, really, between you and the people you've replaced?
I think there's a huge difference. I think there's a massive difference. At the core of any political party, at the core of the political party, is an ideology, is a philosophy. At the core of the APC, whether you have some people coming in from PDP or coming in from elsewhere, at the core is what our manifesto speaks about. Our manifesto speaks about the social development of Nigeria, in particular, looking at issues of the ordinary Nigerian. How do we lift the ordinary Nigerian out of poverty? That has been our focus. That guides everything we do. It guides our budget. It guides the way we develop our budget. It guides the way we think. It guides our economic recovery and growth plan. At the core, there must be a core. Membership of a political party is open to everybody. People are going to come from anywhere. But you must have a core belief. And we have a core belief. That core belief is what has seen us doing our social investment program, is what has seen us investing in infrastructure, despite earning 60% less than previous governments. Okay. We're investing the largest amount of money ever in the history of this country in infrastructure.
Okay. Yes. It's time for another break. We won't be away for too long, so please stay with us.